Hi friends, thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen this morning. I'm so excited that you all are here. We are going to start off with something that I am super excited about. One of my absolute favorite things to eat in the fall time is tomato soup. There are some amazing pre-made tomato soups out there. I enjoy them myself, but every once in a while I want something homemade and something that I can control the ingredients that are going into it. So it's super easy. It's not a hard tomato soup to make. We are going to start with our red vine-ripened tomatoes. If you have homegrown tomatoes, perfect, great, use those. We are at the end of the growing season here in the Northwest, and so we don't have, or I don't have access to fresh garden tomatoes. But if you do have garden tomatoes, by all means use them. If you have a local farmer's market that they're still growing, then that would be great too. But for today, we're just going to use these beautiful vine ripened. I tend to like the vine ripened. You can also use Roma tomatoes if you need to. Really, it's whatever is on sale is probably the best thing to use. I am all about trying to do things on a budget. So if you are looking at the price and the vine ripens, like I just looked at them, they're now $1.98 a pound. Where we are, Roma tomatoes are 98 cents a pound. So if you're looking for budget friendly, then I would by all means use the Romas since they are a little bit cheaper. So we're just going to cut our little stem end off of them. I don't like to put that in my soup. It does blend up, but I just prefer not to have it in there. So we're just going to get the rest of these chopped up. So let me ask you a question. So I love having a grilled cheese sandwich with my tomato soup. That is my favorite way to eat tomato soup, is with a grilled cheese. There's a lot of controversy out there about grilled cheese sandwiches. Do you butter your bread? Do you put mayonnaise on your bread to toast it? Are you a child of the 70s and 80s like me, where American cheese was the thing to put on your grilled cheese sandwiches? Or do you have another combination that you really enjoy eating? I like a good melty grilled cheese sandwich. So I really am kind of an old school girl. I like the old, just regular old American cheese is my thing. So what makes this, so let me know in the comments. Put your answers in the comments for me. I'm really excited to see what you guys say. Do you butter or do you mayonnaise? And what is your favorite cheese to put on a grilled cheese sandwich? So all of our veggies are going to get roasted. What makes this soup unique is we are adding carrot. I know where my carrots came from. I don't feel the need to peel them. I think if you peel them, you're losing a lot of the nutrients that are in the peel of the carrot. So it's totally up to you. If you're not sure where your carrots came from, then by all means, go ahead and peel them. But I am not going to, because I know where my carrots came from, and I feel totally comfortable with having them with the peel on in my soup. So it's all going to get blended up, so it's not really going to matter. So we're just going to cut these up into chunks, and these are going to roast. Now, onion is a thing for me that I am very particular about. I am not a huge fan of onion. I don't like to eat onion. I don't like to bite into a chunk of onion. I'm not a fan of raw onion, but onion gives things amazing flavor, and I don't mind the flavor of the onion. I just prefer not to eat a raw chunk. So what I love about this is that your onion actually is going to roast along with everything else. So we're just going to cut the root end off of it, cut the tip off of it, toss that in the garbage. We're going to peel this really quick. Get that off of there. And then all we're going to do with our onion is we are just going to cut this into quarters. It doesn't need to be a huge process. Just cut this into quarters. Get this right on your sheet pan with your carrots and your tomatoes, and everything is just going to roast together, and it's just going to be amazing. We also need to put in some fresh garlic. We are just going to smack those. We want to leave them whole. So we're going to put these right on our sheet tray with the rest of our beautiful veggies. So this soup is a great way, if you have some vegetables in your fridge, like say your tomatoes aren't looking the best, they're maybe a little bit soft, you can still do this soup even with a soft tomato. It's not gonna hurt it. So I'm gonna put celery in this. My celery is not looking super great, but it's not gonna matter because it's gonna get roasted with everything else. So it doesn't really matter if it's super fresh and crispy because we're not eating it raw. We are actually just gonna roast this up with everything else, and it's gonna go right on our tray with the rest of our veggies, and it's gonna be fine. It's not gonna be a major issue that our celery is not looking the best. No one's gonna know except us. So we'll just keep it between us. So we have this, we're gonna put a little bit of salt. Grab my salt really quick. We're gonna put a little salt on this. We wanna season this pretty heavily because this is making a pretty decent pot of soup. So you wanna get quite a bit of salt on there. We're gonna grab our olive oil, and we're just gonna drizzle a little bit of olive oil on this for a little bit of flavor, a little bit of moisture. This is gonna flavor the soup. So I have my oven preheated to 425. This is what our roasted veggies look like for our homemade roasted tomato soup. We're gonna get this put in our oven at 425. And we're gonna let this roast for about 20 to 25 minutes, around in there somewhere. While that's roasting, we can clean up a little bit and we can get started on our fresh bread. I decided tonight to surprise the hubs with some fresh homemade French bread to go with our grilled cheese sandwiches. So that's what's on the menu. We're gonna clean up a little bit and we're gonna get started on our bread. All right, so while our veggies are in the oven roasting up for our tomato soup, we're gonna get started on our French bread. French bread is just a very basic bread recipe. If you wanna start learning to make homemade bread, French bread is the one to start with. It is just a basic recipe of water, yeast, flour, salt, sometimes olive oil, and that's it. It's just a very basic recipe. So right here we have 1 1/3 cups of hot water. So for yeast, when you bloom your yeast, you wanna make sure that your water is no more than 105 degrees. So basically, if you run tap water, it's gonna be as hot as your hand can stand underneath your faucet. Make sure that it's not too hot though, because if it is, it will kill the yeast instead of making it bloom. So we're gonna pour this right into our mixing bowl. Then we are gonna add in 3½ cups of flour. Now with bread, you wanna make sure that your measurements are exact. Bread baking is an exact science. So we are going to use our knife to measure out our flour and make sure we have exactly 3½ cups of flour. So we're gonna measure this in. French bread is one of the first breads I learned to make many years ago. It was my old boss that taught me how to make French bread, and it was so tasty. It's become one of my favorites. There's so many things you can do with it, from making the loaf of bread to making rolls or sandwich type breads or whatever. All of those things are possible, and it's just so yummy. All right, so we're gonna put in 1½ teaspoons of salt into our flour, water, and yeast mixture. You wanna make sure that you have enough salt in the bread, because if you don't, it's going to be tasteless. It really is going to be flat tasting, and you don't want that. Especially if you're making a yummy grilled cheese with it tonight, you wanna make sure you have a really yummy bread. So we're gonna put that in, we're gonna lock our mixer down. We're gonna start this on low so that it has a chance to start to come together. The bread will start to come together. It's gonna start to pull away from the sides of the mixing bowl. Let me get this out of the way so you can see. So it's gonna start coming together. You can see it starting to pull away from the sides in the mixer, and that's exactly what you want. You want it to start coming together in your mixing bowl. And we can start to slowly increase our speed a little bit so that it really starts to incorporate everything, starts to pull all that dough together. I sometimes, when I make this French bread recipe, I will add herbs to it because I love a good herb bread, especially if you're serving it sliced warm out of the oven with some butter on it with a yummy spaghetti dinner or something like that. Then that is awesome to have some either fresh herbs or even dried herbs in this would be great. But today we're just going to keep it nice and simple because we are using it for a grilled cheese sandwich this evening. So we want to make sure that we have just a nice simple French bread. So we're gonna kick this up just a little bit more so we can kind of loud. All right, so we're gonna unlock this, and you can see our bread has stuck to our dough hook. It's a little bit tacky, but it's not sticky. You don't want it dry, because if your dough is dry, you're gonna wind up with a really, really, really dry dough, and nobody wants that. So we have our bread dough here. We have a little bit of flour down on our board so we can work with it. You don't wanna have a whole lot of flour on here because it's gonna make the dough really super dry, and we don't want that. So we're just gonna put this down on our board so that we can work with it a little bit easier. So we're gonna take our dough, let's get a little flour on our hands so it's not sticking to us. And you wanna get this into a nice, tight ball. Get it, the tighter you can get it, the better it's gonna be. Don't worry about the seam on the bottom, it's gonna be fine because we're gonna put it in an oiled bowl and it's gonna sit covered with a tea towel on our counter or someplace warm out of a draft. You don't want it near a draft. And we're gonna let it sit for about 2 hours until it is nice and risen. So we have our bowl right here. We're gonna put just a dash of oil in here. We're gonna take our bread. We're gonna put it seam side down or pretty side down first. We're gonna roll it. We're gonna flip it over. We're gonna roll it again. Make sure that we have it nice and covered on all sides. And there's our bread. We're gonna cover this with a tea towel. I'm gonna set it on my stove because my stove is on because we're still cooking our vegetables. So I'm gonna put this on the stove with a tea towel. We're gonna let it rise for about 2 hours, and then we will be able to move forward with our bread. But now we're gonna move forward with our vegetables. All right, so we have our bread over here rising. We are ready to pull our veggies out of the oven. And can I just tell you, they smell amazing. I cannot wait to eat this soup tonight. Here are our veggies. Let me get the oven closed a little bit, and I will show you what our veggies look like here. They are amazing. They smell so good. We have our carrots, tomatoes, celery, onions, and garlic. So we're gonna put those in a blender. Whatever kind of blender you have is fine. I happen to have a cooking blender. I love my cooking blender, but whatever works for you. Even a hand blender or an immersion blender works fine. Any kind of high-powered blender so that you really get that nice pureed consistency for your soup. So we're just gonna get all of our veggies loaded into our blender here. Okay, so we're gonna grab our lid. We are gonna puree this. I'm gonna add, I love dill and tomato soup. That is just a perfect pair for me. So we're gonna add a little bit of dill to this. I'm gonna add probably a good tablespoon. And then we're also gonna add about 2 teaspoons of dried oregano. Now, if you wanted to use fresh herbs, you totally could. We are just at the end of our growing season here, and I don't have fresh herbs available to me right at this moment. So I'm just using dried, which most people don't have fresh herbs, you know, at their immediate disposal. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use the dry for now. We're gonna put our lid on. And with this blender, this is, like I said, it's a cooking blender, so I could cook this soup if I wanted to in it, but I'm not going to. I am just gonna put this on a puree mode, and I'm just gonna let this puree up because I'm gonna cook this on the stovetop. I love to add, so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. I'm gonna add heavy cream to this when I cook it tonight. So we're just getting it prepped and ready to go. So this is a good point. You can start this the night before. You can roast your veggies. You can put them in your blender. You can get them pureed up, get it all ready to go, put it in a container, stick it in your refrigerator. When you get home that night, take it out of the fridge, put it in a pot, bring it to temp, get it warm, and then add your cream to it. I'm one of these people that I'm not a fan of watered down tomato soup. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that it's not creamy. I want that creamy texture when I have tomato soup. So we are going to blend this up really quick. It's going to be a little bit loud, but we're going to blend it up really quick. So we are going to pause this for just a second. I want to open this up. I did not put salt in it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and put some salt in it now. We are going to start with about 2 teaspoons. And then we are going to add a little bit of chicken broth to this because it's a little bit thicker than I want it to be. So we're going to add a little chicken broth to it. And then it's going to thicken up again tonight when we do our cream in this. So we're going to put our lid back on and we're just going to start this back up. All right, let's give this a little bit of a taste. See what we think. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. All of those veggies. Oh my gosh, that is the best tomato soup I've ever had, ever. This completely beats anything that you would ever get in a box, a can, a carton, frozen, anything like that. It is phenomenal. But I am going to add a little more chicken broth to it because I want it to be a little on the thin side right now, because it will continue to thicken up. So we're gonna make this a little bit thinner so that we can store it for the day. Then tonight when we heat it up to have with our grilled cheese sandwich, I'm gonna add some cream to it and that'll be perfect. So we're gonna add just a little bit more of our chicken broth to this and we're gonna give it another blend. So our tomato soup is done and ready for dinner tonight. And I am so excited about this. I cannot wait to dip a grilled cheese sandwich into this soup tonight. Check this out. That is beautiful and it smells so good. That is a perfect texture right there for us to add some heavy cream to it tonight when we get ready to make our grilled cheese sandwich. So our bread dough is risen and it is beautiful. Check this out. I am so excited about this bread dough. So remember how small this loaf was, and now it has turned into this big beautiful loaf. So we are going to loosen this up. This is why you put oil in your bowl, because you don't want your dough sticking. You want it to be able to come out nice and beautiful. All right, so we're gonna set our bowl aside. We have our dough here. We are going to, this has enough oil in it. I've learned the hard way not to put too much flour on your board because you end up with a really funky loaf. So I do this a non-traditional way. The lady that taught me how to make French bread many, many years ago at the sorority house when I was there as head chef, she taught me how to make her French bread. And there are a lot of people that take it, they form it just without spreading it out. She always taught me to spread this loaf out, to spread your dough out like this. This is the way that I have taught everybody that I've ever taught to make bread, is this is how I've taught them to do it. I had the pleasure when I was at the sorority house for 11 years, I had many, many houseboys come through my kitchen, and I had the absolute pleasure of teaching several of them how to make bread. I had one particular houseboy that is a phenomenal bread baker. He turned out to be so good. And I literally just gave the bread baking duties on Mondays for chapter to him. I was like, you just do it because you do a fantastic job. I'm not going to worry about it. So we have our bread flattened out here. We are going to just fold this into thirds. We are going to bring our corners up. You want to bring those up and really tighten those ends in so they don't split. And then we are going to flip this over. And we are going to take our bread and we are going to form this into a nice loaf. And then this is going to go on our tray and it's going to rise until it's double in size, which is going to take about 20 to 30 minutes. Really, it really depends on how warm your house is. If your house is really super warm, then it's probably going to rise a lot quicker. If your house is chilly or cold, then you probably want to make sure that you have some place where it's out of a draft, but it's still going to take a little bit longer if your house is cold. We're just going to put it right on our sheet pan that we have here. Just going to take it, we're going to set it right on there. We're going to cover this again with our tea towel and we're going to let this rise till it is double in size. And after it's doubled in size, then we're going to put it in the oven. We're going to bake it and it's going to be amazing with grilled cheese sandwiches tonight. So there is our beautiful French bread and we will have amazing sandwiches. All right, so our bread is nice and risen. Look how beautiful that loaf is. So we are going to take a sharp knife and we are just going to make some cuts right in this dough. It is super, super, super important to do this step because this is what gives you a really, really beautiful loaf of bread. So before this goes in the oven, we are going to give this just a really light brush with some olive oil right on the dough. This is what gives you that really beautiful golden color on your French bread. I cannot tell you how much I love the smell of fresh French bread cooking in the oven. It is the best smell on earth. It just really makes your house smell good, makes everything smell so good in here. My house already smells good from the tomato soup we made earlier, from all those roasted veggies, but this is going to smell amazing while it's in the oven. So this is going to cook. So French bread is a little bit hard to judge by time. You can say, 15 minutes, but it could be 10 minutes. It really depends on your oven and how calibrated it is. So we're going to put this in, we're going to watch it. What you're going to look for is this is going to become nice and crusty, nice and golden brown. You're going to want to do the tap test. And the tap test is what tells you if your bread is done. If you tap the outside of it and it sounds hollow, then it's done all the way through. If it isn't hollow, then it needs to stay in the oven for just a little bit longer. So we're going to put ours in the oven. This is going to be perfect for grilled cheese sandwiches tonight. I'm excited about that. I called hubby at work earlier and told him what we were having and he's super excited for dinner tonight. So we're going to let our bread cook and we're going to tidy up the kitchen after all the things that we put together today. We're going to get the kitchen tidied up, get it ready, and we'll check our bread in a little while. Incredible in my house right now. Let me pull this out so we can take a look at it together. All right, here is our fresh French bread. Look at that, friends. Does that not look amazing? So I think I'm still going to give it a little more olive oil on top of it, but I want you to listen real close. Can you hear that? That is the hollow sound that you want to hear that tells you that your bread is done. That tells me that it is all the way done through, that it is going to be nice and crusty on the outside, nice and tender on the inside, and it's going to make an amazing grilled cheese sandwich tonight. I am so excited about that. So we are going to give this a really quick little brush with some of our leftover olive oil from when we brushed it before it went in. You just can't ever have enough flavor when it comes to bread. The other thing that I'm going to do, it doesn't call for this, but I think it needs it myself. I'm going to just, while it's still warm, I'm going to do just a really light sprinkling of salt, a good kosher salt on top of this loaf of bread so that while it's still warm, that salt can kind of just melt into this bread and just make it that much better for tonight. So we are going to let this cool and we are going to make amazing grilled cheese sandwiches tonight with that homemade tomato soup. We're going to bring everything together and we are going to have an amazing dinner tonight. So I'm so excited you guys joined us this afternoon. I will show you what everything looks like. We'll pull this whole thing together and you'll get to see that amazing grilled cheese sandwich with this fresh French bread and our homemade roasted tomato soup with all of our fresh veggies in it, with our celery and our carrots, our onions, our garlic, and fresh tomatoes. All right, so our soup is smelling amazing and I can't wait to eat this. So we've got this heating up a little bit. We've got our beautiful bread over here. I'll show you this. This bread just looks amazing. That is part of the problem with having a homemade loaf of bread. We've eaten part of it already before we ever got our grilled cheese sandwiches made tonight for dinner. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these started. We've got our butter here. We're gonna butter both sides of our bread. And we're gonna get this, we're gonna get these grilled cheese sandwiches ready. So I am just going traditional tonight with just a little bit of butter on both sides. We're gonna get our stove turned on. But this bread really is, it is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful bread. I am super excited about this. So we're just gonna go traditional here with some good old American cheese. You just can't beat American cheese sometimes for a grilled cheese sandwich. So because this bread is pretty long, we're gonna go a slice and a half on each one of these, just because it is a longer piece of bread. We want to make sure we have plenty of cheese coverage. There's nothing worse than having a grilled cheese sandwich that doesn't have enough cheese on it. All right, so we have our cheese on our bread. We're going to go ahead and butter our tops of our sandwiches really quick. So we need a little more butter. So don't forget to tell me, guys, what your favorite way is to do a grilled cheese sandwich. You guys like to do butter on the bread? Do you do mayonnaise on the bread? I've heard some people do mustard inside, which that sounds kind of interesting. I don't think I've ever done that, but that sounds kind of like an interesting idea. Might be something to try sometime. All right, so our soup has just started to come to a simmer here. It's just starting to bubble a little bit. So we're gonna add some heavy cream to this. We're gonna do, about a quarter cup, roughly. Like I said, this soup is super, super creamy already as it is, with just the veggies coming out of the blender. You don't need to put the cream in it. I just like the cream in this. So we are gonna just let this continue to heat up. It's gonna continue to get warm, and it's gonna be perfect to dip our grilled cheese sandwiches in. As soon as those get done, grab a spatula here so that we can watch our sandwiches. This bread, I think, is going to be amazing for these sandwiches. I just love the way it looks. And let me tell you, like I said, it actually is really tasty. As soon as my husband got home from work and saw the bread, he had to cut into it. He had to have a piece. That is why having homemade bread in your house is dangerous. It's never a good idea, especially if it's really good bread. This is a great recipe, so it's definitely something that you would want to make. It's an easy bread recipe to make, so it's not going to be anything super difficult. Really, the time it just takes is the letting your yeast proof, letting the dough rise. That's really what takes the longest. It really isn't hard to mix it up. It's not hard to make it. It's just letting it rise is the main part. So anyway, these sandwiches are looking great. All right, so our grilled cheese sandwiches are done and they are looking amazing. And I just want to show you what this looks like. Nice and cheesy and gooey. We are going to scoop up some of our delicious tomato soup. All right, and I think it can use just a little bit more dried dill on top for just a little bit of flavor. And here is our grilled cheese and our tomato soup that is made with our homemade bread, nice and cheesy and gooey, our beautiful tomato soup. And this is going to be an amazing dinner for a beautiful fall evening. I want to thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen today. It's such a blessing to have you all here. I hope that you'll join me again. If you liked this video, please give it a like. That really helps me out a lot. If you like this kind of content, if you love this recipe, please subscribe to my channel. That also helps me out a lot, and I would love to share some more recipes with you in the kitchen. I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks again, friends.